Hello everyone. Today we will begin our descent into the decaying history of a location, whispered about only in hushed tones. A place known simply as the quiet Korean ghost hospital and the dark secret it guards. Settle in, turn off the lights, and let the outside world fade away. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the overgrown property. The humid Korean night air hangs heavy, smelling of rain and the sharp scent of pine from the surrounding hills. Before you, the hospital stands, a hulking monument to forgotten suffering. Its concrete facade is streaked black, like dried tears, and the windows are shattered panes of glass that look like empty, accusing eyes staring out into the darkness. There is no sound here. Not even the chirp of crickets, just a profound, deafening silence that seems to swallow all noise. You feel a prickling sensation on the back of your neck, the instinctive knowledge that you are an intruder here. The atmosphere is not merely abandoned, it is actively waiting. Before we begin, I ask you to take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell if my video brings you something truly interesting. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is there. I want to know how far apart we are on this dark night. And now, let's begin this journey. You pull the iron gate open. The rusted hinges scream a lonely, piercing protest that seems to echo for miles in the silence. It is a sound that instantly alerts whatever resides within that you have arrived. You step onto the cracked asphalt driveway, and immediately you notice it, the sound that breaks the silence. It is not close, but distant, carried on the faintest breeze, almost drowned out by your own breathing. It is a faint, repetitive hymn. It sounds old, mournful, and sung by a single, reedy voice. It's too gentle to be alarming, yet its presence here, in a place supposedly deserted for decades, creates a profound unease that settles deep in your chest. Your flashlight beam dances across the grounds. There are strange, dead patches in the courtyard, where the grass simply refuses to grow, forming perfect, eerie circles. As you move closer to the main entrance, you pass a forgotten ambulance, its tires melted into the asphalt, its windows opaque with grime. You find the front door, half open, hanging precariously on a single hinge, inviting you into the black maw of the building. With a breath you didn't realize you were holding, you slip inside. The air instantly changes, becoming heavy, cold, and still. The smell that hits you is complex, not just decay, but a strange mixture of dust, disinfectant long past its prime, and something metallic, like old pennies. You are now in the small vestibule. Straight ahead, the main corridor stretches, disappearing into absolute darkness. To your left, a set of ruined benches where patients once waited patiently, now overturned. The sound of the hymn, which was distant outside, seems to have vanished completely inside. The sudden absence is more unnerving than its presence. You hold your breath, straining your ears, but there is only the silence, a silence that seems to press against your eardrums. As you step fully inside, a real terrifying event begins to manifest around you. Though you do not yet know the full story, you notice a small, dried-up bouquet of white chrysanthemums, flowers associated with mourning in Korea, on a windowsill. They look ancient, yet somehow they haven't crumbled to dust. and then you see it, a single, distinct fingerprint pressed into the thick layer of dust on the wooden frame of the inner door. It is clearly defined, as if left just moments ago. You shine your light closer. It is small, much smaller than an adult's, and distinctly pressed downward, as though someone or something was trying to push the door closed after you entered. You quickly scan the empty corridor. A sudden chill running from your heels up to your spine. You tell yourself it was just the wind, a trick of the light. But there is no wind inside this stagnant box. You proceed cautiously, your steps muffled by the dust-laden floor, heading toward the main lobby where the nurse's station would have been. You feel the hospital wrapping itself around you, closing you off from the outside world. This place doesn't feel empty, it feels occupied, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. You are already an inseparable part of its dark narrative. You move deeper into the dark. You stand in the main lobby now, a vast, oppressive space that seems too large for a mere hospital. The ceiling soars high above you, lost in the shadows, and the air here is noticeably cooler, a static chill that doesn't belong to the temperate night outside. You remember the small fingerprint, the impression still vivid in your mind. Was it a welcome or a final, desperate push to keep the terrible things within exactly where they belong? Exactly where? The silence here is not empty. It is a weight, a heavy blanket of unspoken history. Every breath you take, every soft rustle of your clothing feels amplified. A disrespectful noise in a cathedral of forgotten souls. Your flashlight beam cuts through the gloom, illuminating thick columns of dust motes dancing in the cold light. Suspended in air that hasn't moved for years, the defining characteristic of this space is its scent. It is the overwhelming, complex odor of abandonment, compounded by the hospital's specific past. There is the bitter, stale tang of old decay, an organic rot that hints at something left behind to wither. But beneath it is the sharp, almost sterile smell of forgotten medicine, sulfur, iron, and a cloying sweetness of expired syrups. This medicinal presence reminds you that this place was once dedicated to healing, a stark contrast to the darkness it now harbors. It is the scent of failed salvation. You approach what remains of the central information desk. The wooden surface is warped, the once bright veneer now peeling away like old skin. Underneath the glass top, you see a faded schedule, meticulously laid out for a date over 3 decades ago, a specific day that, for this building, never ended. Then you notice a strange, mysterious detail that causes you to pause. On the wall behind the desk, there is a cork notice board, slightly tilted, yet everything pinned to it, old memos, handwritten reminders, even a cheerful poster about hand hygiene is perfectly intact, preserved by the dust. However, one single section in the lower right-hand corner is missing. It's not just fallen off, it has been violently, deliberately torn away, leaving behind ragged scraps of cork and a clean, contrasting rectangle of bare wall where the protective layer of dust was disturbed. Whatever was posted there was considered too important or too dangerous to be left behind, and the removal was done in a panic. You try to imagine the fear in the hands that ripped it loose. You move past the desk, heading toward the left wing, where a sign, barely visible under the grime, reads, Ward A. This is where the nurse's station for the first floor would be located, and where you hope to find the logbooks, mentioned in the outline the key to unlocking this hospital's terrible secret. As you walk, your attention is drawn to the floor. The linoleum is cracked and patterned in an unsettling retro shade of green that the darkness transforms into something bilious and unhealthy. You are hyper-aware of your own footsteps, constantly expecting an echo that doesn't come. And then, your breath catches in the far corner of the lobby, near the hallway leading to the staff break room. There is a stack of ancient, heavy patient files. They are bound with thick, brittle string. You see them clearly in your light. As you gaze at them, a gentle scare happens, a sudden, sharp, almost metallic tink sound, like a small piece of metal dropping onto the concrete floor, rips through the dead air. It is not an echo, not a creak, but a sound of impossibility. You freeze, heart hammering against your ribs. The sound came from the end of the unlit hallway behind the files. You hold your light steady, waiting. Nothing. The silence returns, heavier than before, mocking your momentary terror. Did a forgotten key fall from a rusty hook? Or did something, alerted by your presence, drop a warning? This stillness, this deliberate lack of movement, is the real terrifying event of this hospital. It is the sensation that something is holding its breath alongside you. You find yourself listening not for movement, but for the lack of it. For the moment the silence will finally break and reveal the thing that is sharing this space. It is a slow, cold realization that every shadow, every corner, is a place of potential emergence. You press on, drawn forward by the faint, invisible pull towards the nurse's station, seeking the dark answers hidden in the forgotten pages of the hospital's log. You must find out what was on that notice board. You need the logbook. You need to know when that specific day finally ended. You follow the chilling pull toward the left wing, Ward A, leaving the echoing emptiness of the main lobby behind. The atmosphere here is marginally different. The ceilings are lower. The air feels heavier, somehow more concentrated with suffering. Your flashlight beam illuminates a long row of patient rooms, their doors uniformly ajar, hanging slackly like open mouths. You resist the urge to glance into them, knowing that whatever you might see would be better left in the darkness. You finally reach the nurse's station. It is a small, partitioned space, completely encased in dusty glass. The counter is littered with the detritus of a panicked departure, a spilled tray of rusted syringes, a broken phone receiver dangling by its cord, and a few scattered sheets of paper covered in hurried, almost illegible Korean script. The silence here feels personal, the kind of silence that follows a sudden violent cessation of noise. On the main desk, tucked beneath a broken filing cabinet, you find it the logbook. It is a thick, canvas-bound ledger, smelling strongly of mold and age. Your hands are unsteady as you brush away the grit and open it. The pages are filled with the meticulous, faded handwriting of several different nurses, spanning years. Most entries are mundane medication times, shift changes, maintenance requests. But as you turn the pages, the entries begin to shift. The dates jump strangely, sometimes repeating the same day several times. You find a section dated right before the hospital's official closure. That details the strange phenomenon that became the real terrifying event leading up to the abandonment. The nurses, in their frantic entries, start documenting the patient's silence. One entry reads, Patient in 402, not speaking, refused food, just staring at the ceiling. Not typical catatonia, seems listening. Another, written with desperate urgency. 3 more today, all staring. No response to light or sound, not sleeping. They are all watching the same spot in the upper corner of the room. This wasn't a standard outbreak, it was a phenomenon of collective, enforced stillness. They were being silenced by something intangible, something that demanded utter, passive awareness from its victims. You flip further, searching for the end of the log, the final, desperate entry. And there it is, a final scrawl in dark ink that has bled into the paper. The girl is here. She walks the wards. The silence is spreading. We can't hear the children anymore. We must leave everything behind. Do not go to the basement. The entry is unsigned, the writing wild and broken. You look closer at the strange patient entries. One page is dedicated to a single patient, simply listed as the girl, RNA. Her room number is not recorded, and the registered name section is marked with NA. But what chills you to the core is the diagnosis column. It doesn't contain a medical term. Instead, someone meticulously drew a small, perfect circle, an ominous, non-medical symbol in red ink next to her name. It repeats for every observation date, a small, ominous circle. Why would a nurse, documenting a medical record, use a symbol instead of a classification? Was she beyond the scope of diagnosis? Or was this symbol a prearranged code, known only to a select few on the staff, denoting a specific, non-clinical function? As you absorb this information, a familiar sound manifests, the kind of sound that doesn't belong in this dusty time capsule. It's the distant, subtle click of a door latch, as if a door, which you are certain you saw open, has just been quietly, firmly closed down the hall. You look up, your light swinging rapidly down the corridor, catching nothing but dust and shadows. But you have been here too long to dismiss it. Was it the wind finally finding a way in, or did something just seal off your path of retreat? The logbook is a gift, but it also paints a target on your back. You now know about the silence, the mysterious girl, and the chilling command, do not go to the basement. Naturally, the deepest secrets, and possibly the only way out of this deepening nightmare, are exactly where you are warned not to look. The logbook points you downward. You carefully place the ledger back, knowing its secrets are now yours, and turn your attention to the dark stairwell leading to the lower levels. The scent of disinfectant seems stronger there, a sharp, cold reminder of the hospital's failing attempts to contain something that was never meant to be cured. The warning echoes in your mind. Do not go to the basement. But the ledger, with its frantic final entry and the unsettling red circles, has done its job. It has pointed your fear directly toward the deep. The stairwell leading down is a shaft of pure, impenetrable blackness, and the air wafting up from it is dramatically colder, carrying a distinct, sharp metallic tang that makes your nose burn. This is the scent of deep-seated moisture and decay, combined with the heavy, pervasive odor of iron. You begin your descent. Each step on the concrete treads is deliberate, loud in the echoing stairwell, a continuous reminder of your trespass. The flashlight beam struggles against the absolute gloom, illuminating the walls, which are coated in a thick, green-black slime near the floor. a clear sign that water has been a constant, unwelcome resident down below. The hospital is not only abandoned, it is drowning, slowly. When you reach the bottom, the basement immediately confirms the warning. It is a long, low-ceilinged area, and the first thing you notice is the sound of sloshing water. The entire sublevel is flooded not deeply, but enough that a thin, murky layer of water covers the concrete floor, reflecting your flashlight beam back in unstable, shimmering patterns. Your footsteps now create ripples, disturbing the stillness of this subterranean tomb. The feeling here is one of heavy, ancient pressure, as if the entire weight of the 4 stories above is pressing down on this single, submerged level. You navigate cautiously, realizing that the flood is hiding unknown dangers beneath its dark surface, tripping hazards, broken glass, or perhaps something far more disturbing. Then, you encounter the basement's gate. Blocking your path deeper into the level is a heavy, rusted wire mesh gate, the kind designed to keep staff or patients out of restricted areas like boiler rooms or morgues. It is secured by a thick, antique padlock, equally rusted, its brass housing oxidized and dark. The gate itself is slightly bowed inward, suggesting someone or something tried to force their way through it, either in or out, and failed. As you shine your light over the gate, the real terrifying event of this section makes itself known. From the far, unseen side of the gate, you hear a sound, a distinct dragging, shloop, shloop noise. It sounds like something heavy, wet, and limbless being pulled across the submerged concrete floor, moving slowly, deliberately toward the gate. The sound stops precisely when your light hits the center of the mesh. Whatever it is aware of your presence and is waiting, just out of sight, on the other side. You freeze, breathing shallowly, desperately trying to discern the shape of the thing in the blackness, but the water's surface only offers mocking, distorted reflections. This feeling of being watched by an unseen, submerged entity is profoundly unsettling. It's the kind of terror that comes not from a sudden jump scare, but from the slow, cold certainty that a presence of immense darkness resides just beyond your reach. You pull back slightly, your heart racing. The padlock is the immediate barrier, an unbreakable lock on a door you desperately want to open. You need to know what that thing is, and you need to see what the logbook warned against. Your attention returns to the immediate area around the gate. Your light catches something glinting faintly in the murky water near your feet. With slow, careful movements, you reach down into the icy water. Your fingers close around a small object, surprisingly heavy for its size. You pull it out and wipe the slime away on your clothes. It is the mysterious key. It is an old-fashioned skeleton key, made of dark, heavy iron, intricately designed with a strange, almost ceremonial head. Not the kind of key for a simple padlock. It feels cold and old in your hand. This is the strange, mysterious detail that connects you directly to the hospital's dark core. How did it end up here, lying openly in the flooded basement, near the locked gate? After decades of abandonment, was it dropped accidentally or left intentionally? A macabre invitation to proceed. You examine the padlock again. The skeleton key, while beautiful, is far too delicate and oddly shaped to open this modern industrial lock. The lock is a dead end, But you now hold a key that was meant to open something else, something hidden, something perhaps integral to the girl, and the red circle drawn in the ledger. You turn away from the gate. The sound of the slow, wet, shlew up, starting again, now that you are no longer shining your direct light upon it. You know that whatever is behind that barrier is not meant to be seen. You must find the lock that matches this strange, the cold key. You turn your light back toward the stairs, but your eyes scan the walls, searching for a hidden door, a recessed panel, or a sign that leads away from this flooded entrance and toward the hospital's true buried secret. You retreat from the oppressive chill of the flooded basement, your hand gripping the mysterious skeleton key, a heavy, cold promise of deeper secrets. The unsettling schlooping sound fades as you ascend, but the feeling of being watched lingers like a physical chill clinging to your clothes. The key you hold doesn't belong to the mundane world of padlocks. It belongs to the hospital's heart, the place where the red circles and the name "the girl" intersect. You move to the third floor, guided by a strange, academic curiosity and a growing sense of dread. The upper wards are quieter than the lobby, somehow more clinical and tragic. The air here is thin, dry, and smells faintly of chalk dust and dried blood. You navigate the long, identical corridors, finally stopping at a door where the faded number 304 is barely visible beneath a layer of grime. The nurse's log mentioned isolation, and this door is slightly different. It is thicker than the others, reinforced with steel plates, and has a small, heavily grated observation window. This was a place for patients who were deemed dangerous, contagious, or perhaps simply too knowing. You gently push the door open. It grinds inward, protesting the movement with a long, drawn-out squeal that immediately fills the oppressive silence. You step inside the former isolation room, room 304. The space is small and bare, with institutional white walls that were clearly scrubbed hundreds of times. Though they are now scarred and stained, there is only a single, bolted-down metal cot and a small drainage hole in the center of the concrete floor. The room is cold, noticeably colder than the hallway outside, suggesting a constant, static presence of lingering sorrow. As your flashlight beam sweeps across the walls, you begin to see the etchings, not graffiti, but meticulous scratchings, done with intense focus. Most are lines, counting days, or perhaps heartbeats. But then you see the drawing, a distorted, childish depiction of a sun with too many rays, positioned above a figure with wide, vacant eyes. The figure is holding something small and round, perhaps the ceremonial key or the mysterious red circle from the ledger. This leads you to the real terrifying event of this room, the writing on the wall. Scratched deep into the plaster, right at eye level on the wall opposite the cot, is a single chilling phrase, repeated over and over, until the words blur into a frenzied texture. They come when the silence is complete. The bell rings when she speaks. The circle is broken. I am the silence now. The repetition is obsessive, the handwriting deteriorating from legible script into a frantic mess of lines and broken characters. It is a terrifying chronicle of psychological breakdown under an unimaginable duress, a patient's final, desperate attempt to document the rules of a horror that no one would believe. The urgency of the words suggests a slow burn terror that built to an unbearable climax right here in this tiny room. You immediately recognize the mention of the silence and the circle, confirming that the terror of the upper floors is deeply connected to the basement's secret and the nameless girl. But the phrase, "the bell rings when she speaks," introduces a new, disturbing auditory element to the horror, a contrast to the overwhelming silence that dominates the building. As you stand there, absorbing the chilling prophecy scratched onto the wall, a strange, mysterious detail reveals itself. Not on the wall, but beneath the cot. There is a depression in the floor, almost invisible, where the metal frame has worn away the concrete over years of scraping. And within this depression, half hidden by dust, is a small, carefully folded square of coarse, brown cloth, a piece of a patient's uniform, perhaps. You pull it out, and as it unfolds, you see that it contains a small, perfectly preserved handful of dried, pale yellow petals. They look like the petals of a chrysanthemum, the same flower you saw on the windowsill in the lobby. Why would a patient in isolation painstakingly collect and hide a handful of funeral flowers? It is an act of meticulous reverence for the dead, or perhaps a tribute to the entity that brought the silence. Your mind races, trying to connect the petals, the key, the circle, and the message on the wall. Was the author of this script the one who dropped the key in the basement? Or was this small bundle of petals meant for you to find? The silence, which had been pressing on you since you entered, suddenly feels brittle. You hear a sound so soft it is almost an illusion, the faint, rhythmic creak of a rocking chair, coming from somewhere deep within the main corridor, just beyond the edge of your light. It is a patient, a nurse, or something waiting with impossible patience. You know it is a gentle scare designed to keep you alert, a cold spine prick in this silent lullaby of horror. You quickly back out of room 304, the urgent words on the wall seared into your memory. The scent of dried flowers now replacing the metallic tang of the basement. The slow terror continues, and you must find the lock that matches the key before the bell begins to ring. You move away from the chilling confines of room 304, the urgency of the wall-scratched message, "the bell rings when she speaks," driving you deeper into the silence of the third floor. You clutch the heavy, strange, skeleton key. It's cold metal, a grounding presence against the encroaching dread. You are now hunting for the place where the medical facade truly broke down. The floor plan of a hospital, particularly a ghost hospital, is never logical. Your search leads you to a wing that looks distinctly different, a series of large, interconnected rooms that clearly served a communal function. You find a pair of heavy double doors that swing inward to reveal what was once the main operating room complex. The room is vast, high-ceilinged, and dominated by a huge, oxidized surgical lamp, hanging precariously above an empty, blood-stained operating table. The air here is sharp, with the metallic scent of old blood and the faint, unsettling sweetness of ether. Your light catches discarded instruments, scalpels, clamps, and needles scattered across the tiled floor, frozen in a final, chaotic moment of flight. The real terrifying event here is not the gore, but the sense of immediate, panicked abandonment. A heavy, antique cart, the kind used to ferry patients, sits frozen mid-transport, its wheels locked. On the cart, resting on a white sheet that has turned brittle and yellowed, is a single, chilling discovery, a small, child-sized wooden doll. It is primitive, perhaps hand-carved, and completely featureless except for two small red circles painted exactly where the eyes should be. This doll was not a comfort. It was a participant, perhaps a placeholder, in a ritual that took place right on this operating table. But the true academic and historical anomaly lies in the tools. On a stainless steel table, you find a collection of items that do not belong in a 20th century Korean hospital. Mixed in with the modern clamps are several pieces of woven, dry hemp cord tied in intricate, ancient knots. These cords were clearly used recently, as they are not brittle with age like the surrounding material. This observation brings you to the first obscure academic debate that haunts this place. You recall a forgotten text detailing ancient Korean shamanic and folk practices, specifically the debate surrounding ancient bindings used not to heal the body, but to contain or redirect a vengeful or malevolent spirit. No one in modern academic circles fully understands why these cords were sometimes used to bind the extremities of the sick or the dying. Was it an attempt to prevent the spirit from escaping too quickly and turning vengeful? Or was it to trap a specific spirit within a host, using the body as a vessel? The debate centers on intent. Was the binding for protection or for sacrifice? The presence of these bindings, right here in the clinical heart of the hospital, suggests that the staff, or at least a dark faction within the staff, had abandoned science for something far older and far more sinister. They were trying to bind something to this hospital, to this place. You examine the operating table more closely, following a dark stain that runs down the side. You notice a strange, mysterious detail that makes your blood run cold, etched into the chrome surface of the table. Directly beneath where a body would lie are several more of those small, perfect red circles. Not scratched, but neatly, deliberately etched into the metal, forming a pattern that is repeated on the doll's face and mentioned as the diagnosis of the girl. This symbol, not a diagnosis but an ancient occult marker, confirms the hospital's true hidden function. As you lean in close to the table, the metallic air seems to condense around you. You hear a sound, not a jump scare, but a sudden, unmistakable auditory illusion. A quick, frantic, flickering sound, like an outdated fluorescent bulb desperately trying to ignite, coming from the shadowed corner of the operating room. It repeats 3 times flick, 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 and then stops, plunging the space back into a silence that now feels hostile, intelligent. If you hear a bell now, don't blame me. I warned you. The key in your hand suddenly feels warmer, almost buzzing faintly against your palm, drawn by the power of the etched circles. You have confirmed that the hospital was not just treating patients. It was performing an ancient ritual. You realize that your next target must be the source of the cover-up, the director's office, where the full, official story of the hospital's dark secret must surely be contained. You exit the terrifying stillness of the operating room. The image of the featureless doll with its painted red circles burned into your memory. The hemp cords in the obscure academic debate about ancient bindings confirm that this hospital's purpose transcended medicine. The scent of blood and ether slowly gives way to the drier, cleaner air of the administrative offices, a stark contrast to the wards you've just left. You head for the second floor, the administrative hub, seeking the hospital's central nervous system, the director's office. The office wing is silent, lined with closed doors and name plaques that are mostly unreadable. You move with a renewed sense of purpose, driven by the knowledge that the paper trail, the official lie, must be here. You find the director's office at the end of a long, dark corridor. The door is heavy, made of solid wood, and remains closed, the final, stubborn barrier to the truth. You try the handle. It is predictably locked. You examine the lock, realizing it's an old-style mechanism, not the modern padlock you found in the basement. You take out the heavy, cold, mysterious key you recovered from the flooded floor. It slides into the keyhole with uncanny ease, clicking softly. The moment the lock turns, you feel a faint, electrical hum travel up your arm, and the silence around you seems to deepen, a sudden, sharp reduction in ambient noise. You step inside. The office is large and remarkably well preserved compared to the rest of the hospital. Dust covers everything, but the desk is massive, mahogany and untouched. Behind it, a leather chair is tipped slightly, as if the director rose suddenly and never returned. There's a strange, persistent feeling here, not of suffering, but of immense, calculated control. The real terrifying event begins as your flashlight crosses the desk. It's here that you find the official documentation of the hospital's closure. You locate a thick bound file marked Internal Review and Mandatory Closure, 1988. The report details a rapid, aggressive spread of a previously unknown, highly communicable, viral strain, the official story. But as you flip through the pages, you see strange, glaring inconsistencies. The listed symptoms are not those of a virus. They detail the patient's progressive inability to speak, followed by their refusal to move, concluding with that terrifying, collective stillness noted in the nurse's log. And then you find the memo. Tucked inside the file is a single sheet of unstamped paper detailing the orders for the final evacuation. The chilling part is the mandatory instruction. All patient records concerning the red circle designation are to be burned on site. No mention of the girl is to be made in the official report. Staff are to be strictly forbidden from speaking about the sound of the bell. The memo confirms your deepest fear: the entire viral outbreak was a manufactured lie to cover up a ritualistic event. And the hospital's dark secret was deliberately erased, but not quite thoroughly enough. As you stand there, holding the evidence of this catastrophic deception, a strange, mysterious detail draws your attention away from the desk. Hanging innocuously on a hook near the door is a simple, dark brown coat, the director's coat, perhaps. But in the breast pocket, you find something that should not be there: a tiny, smooth, water-worn pebble, the kind of stone found only on the banks of a remote, inland stream. Not a coastal town. You take it out. It is warm to the touch. And strangely, when you hold it, the overwhelming scent of decay that permeates the hospital seems to momentarily lessen, replaced by a momentary, fleeting whiff of fresh, cold river water. Why would the director of a hospital, fleeing a supposed epidemic, take the time to slip a warm, smooth river stone into his pocket? Was it a talisman, a marker, or a clue to his own eventual escape? Or perhaps his final resting place? You look back at the desk and find the lockbox you expected. It is hidden beneath a removable panel and secured by a small combination lock. You quickly realize the combination. The date of the final desperate entry in the nurse's log, the day the official story says the virus peaked. You spin the numbers, and the lock clicks open. Inside, there are no valuables, only one slim manila folder. It is marked simply Patient Zero. As you reach for the folder, a soft, deliberate creak echoes from the hallway outside the door you just locked. It is the sound of heavy pressure being applied to the old wooden floorboards directly outside the director's office, moving slowly, pausing precisely at your location. You are locked in, and something has come to retrieve the files you just discovered. The time for quiet exploration is over. The hospital knows what you have taken. The weight on the floorboards outside the director's office is chillingly real. A slow, heavy pressure that stops precisely at your door. You are locked in, holding the key to the official deception. And something is waiting just beyond the wood. Ignoring the racing pulse in your ears, you snatch the manila folder marked Patient Zero. You pull the folder open. Inside, the pages are thick and brittle, detailing the single subject known only as the girl, RNA. The records are sparse, almost surgically clean of detail. Yet, what they omit speaks volumes. Her file states she arrived not by ambulance, but was deposited by an unknown party late one night, years before the supposed outbreak. Her age is listed only as estimated 8 to 10 years. She had no name, no family, and no discernible illness. She was merely a presence. This file is the single most important real terrifying event you have uncovered. Her chart contains the typical physical assessments: height, weight, vital signs, all listed as perfectly normal. But the behavioral notes are what stop your breath. Patient exhibits profound, continuous stillness. Does not respond to stimulus, yet tracks movement across the room with peripheral vision. Staff notes when present, other patients' conditions stabilize, then worsen rapidly upon her absence. The terrifying realization washes over you. She was never a patient. She was a catalyst, or perhaps a sentinel. She was the living core of the hospital's dark function, the source of the silence that spread. The staff wasn't treating her, they were containing her, or possibly feeding her the stillness of the others. You find a photograph tucked into the very back of the folder, a faded, grainy black and white picture of a young girl. She is standing perfectly straight, expressionless, dressed in a simple, oversized white hospital gown. Her hair is black and hangs straight around a face that is hauntingly passive. What strikes you and makes your stomach clench is that her eyes, those dark, vacant eyes, were meticulously scratched out on the photo, replaced crudely with 2 more of those ominous red circles. This connects everything: the ledger, the operating table, the writing in room 304. The red circle is her sigil, the dark mark of the hospital's true, non-medical identity. As you stare at the scratched-out photograph, a strange, mysterious detail unfolds within the file itself. You notice a small, handwritten poem or nursery rhyme tucked beneath the photo, written in an archaic form of Korean, but translated in small, neat English annotations along the side. The sun must sleep so the dark can see. The silence grows beneath the tree. Little bell, ring for me, to wake the darkness and set her free. This is not a medical observation. This is a lullaby of sacrifice, a chilling sub-story that reveals the girl's presence is tied to a specific sequence of events: the little bell and the final waking. It confirms that the horror has a rhythm, a ritualistic cadence waiting to climax. The floorboard outside your door creaks again. Heavier this time, a slow, deliberate shift of immense, cold weight. It is directly outside, separated from you by only the thickness of the old wooden door. You hold your breath, your muscles rigid. You know you have only moments before whatever is out there, a vengeful doctor, a restless spirit, or the manifestation of the hospital's collective silence begins its next move. The narrative shifts from discovery to urgent escape. You quickly stow the file. Your next destination must be the fourth floor dread, the top level of the hospital. If the girl was a sentinel, and the silence was spread from above, then the location of the main ritual, or perhaps the place where she finally vanished, must be on the highest floor, the closest to the sun mentioned in the ritual lullaby. You recall the message from the nurse's log. We can't hear the children anymore. If the girl silenced the patients, perhaps the highest floor, closest to the light, is where the silence was finally harvested. You turn your back on the heavy presence behind the locked door, your heart beating the rhythm of the escape, and silently pull yourself toward the darkest level, ascending into the final, waiting gloom. You leave the director's office, the heavy silence outside broken only by the slight, terrible pressure that was waiting for you. You don't dare unlock the door. The heavy, ancient iron key feels hot in your pocket, and the only path now is upward. You ascend the final flight of stairs to the fourth floor dread, the highest point of the hospital. The moment you step onto this floor, the atmosphere changes drastically. It is not just cold, it is sterile. The smell of decay and old blood is gone, replaced by the faint, stinging scent of pure ozone and dust that feels unnaturally dry. The corridor here is noticeably narrower, the ceiling lower, creating a sense of being compressed. This floor feels less like a medical ward and more like an attic, a place for storage, for things meant to be forgotten and left undisturbed. You move down the hallway. Unlike the other floors, indeed, the doors here are not ajar, they are uniformly closed. Their numbers long since peeled away. Everything here is muffled, quiet, and unsettlingly neat, as if the final staff members didn't flee this floor, but simply closed it up, locking the darkness in place. The silence here is the most profound yet. It is so complete that you begin to hear the internal sounds of your own body, the whooshing of blood in your ears, the faint, dry clicking of your eyelids. This level is the distillation of the silence the nurses wrote about, the final stage of the collective stillness. Then, you hear it, the real terrifying event that this floor holds. It is subtle, almost swallowed by the silence, but distinct. It is the sound of a child's mournful whisper. It doesn't come from a specific room, but seems to be woven into the very fabric of the air around you, surrounding your head. The whisper is in Korean, too faint to translate, but its tone is unmistakable, a sound of profound, ancient sorrow, repeated rhythmically, like a word that has lost its meaning through endless repetition. You freeze, your light shaking. This is the sound of a child that the final nurse's log entry mentioned. We can't hear the children anymore. But you can hear this one. Is it the girl, the catalyst? Or is it one of the other children that were silenced here? Their sorrow bound to the hospital's ceiling. The whisper stops as abruptly as it began, replaced by a sudden, jarring change in the ambient pressure. You feel the distinct physical sensation of cold air moving past your right ear. A sharp, icy gust in the otherwise stagnant hallway, as if something invisible just swept past you. You press on, fighting the urge to retreat. You must find the source of the whisper, the heart of the girl's presence. Every 3 to 5 parts, a gentle scare must occur. You are hyper-aware of your surroundings, and suddenly, you see it. Your flashlight beam catches the reflection in a tiny, high window at the end of the hall. For a fleeting second, you see not your own reflection, but the outline of a small figure standing motionless right behind you, just outside the radius of your light. You whirl around immediately. There is nothing but the empty hallway, the closed doors, and the profound, accusing silence. You turn back, your hands clammy. The reflection is gone. But the image is perfectly preserved in your mind, a small, dark outline, waiting. You realize this is the floor where the hospital's ritual achieved its dreadful fulfillment. This high, dry floor was a kind of spiritual attic, used to store the finished product of their dark work. You notice a strange, mysterious detail that only the dry atmosphere of the 4th floor would preserve. On the floor, near the wall, is a perfectly formed, complete circle of black, fine ash. It looks like the residue of burnt paper or perhaps incense, not just swept into a circle, but meticulously arranged. The circle is about 3 feet in diameter, and though the hospital has been abandoned for decades, this ash pile has not been dispersed by air currents or disturbed by rodents. It is a sign of recent, or at least supernaturally preserved, activity. The whisper, the outline, the ash circle, this floor is the key. You carefully step around the black ash circle, knowing that this floor holds the final, vital piece of the puzzle, the altar or room where the ritual took place. The whisper has guided you to the place where the silence was truly born. The black ash circle on the 4th floor acts as a dark compass, directing you down the eerie, sterile corridor. The memory of the child's mournful whisper and the shadow in the window pushes you forward, confirming that this high-up, dry space is the heart of the ritualistic activity. The air here, though clean of decay, feels heavy, charged with residual power. You notice that one of the closed doors at the end of the hall is slightly ajar, casting a thin, vertical line of absolute blackness into the already dim hallway. It is a door that doesn't belong. It is smaller than the others, clearly not a patient room, and the peeling paint suggests it was a utility or supply closet. This door is where the black ash circle pointed you. You move to the door and push it open slowly. The hinges make a dry, scratching noise. You shine your light inside, expecting shelves of dusty linens or cleaning supplies. Instead, you find a small, square room, an unnaturally neat, pristine supply closet that has been meticulously converted into a ritual room. The shelves are gone. The walls have been entirely covered with a thick, rough, dark brown paper, taped crudely but thoroughly, silencing any potential echoes. In the center of the concrete floor is a second, larger, circular mark. This one not made of ash, but painted onto the concrete with a thick, dark substance that could be old, dried blood, or deeply oxidized earth. Inside this circle is a single, worn wooden stool. The real terrifying event is laid out before you, an altar of pure, distilled fear. On the stool, neatly arranged, you find the remnants of the ceremony. There are 2 piles of fine, gray, burnt incense, the same material as the ash circle in the hallway, flanking a small, shallow ceramic bowl. The bowl is empty, but its interior is stained with the same dark, reddish substance used to paint the circle on the floor. This was clearly the site of prolonged, repeated ceremonies designed to capture and contain something terrible. You examine the incense piles. The smell, even after decades, is strong, a medicinal, cloying scent of burnt herbs and pulverized wood. A smell you recognize from ancient texts as being used in binding and purification rites, rituals meant to make a space safe for a specific, dangerous entity. The hospital staff wasn't trying to cleanse the patients, they were trying to control the air for the girl. As you stand in the stifling, small room, you feel the need to verify the academic link. This area brings you to another obscure academic debate about the Korean concept of Chi-ryong, the idea of a spirit that has become geographically fixed to a single place through ritual or sudden traumatic death. The debate among folklorists centers on whether such a spirit can be contained indefinitely using physical boundary markers like circles, or whether the binding requires a continuous, willing sacrifice, the presence of the circle, the incense, and the missing patients strongly suggests the staff cross the line from protection into active, repeated sacrifice to keep the powerful spirit, the girl, locked in place. Suddenly, a gentle scare manifests. The faint, rhythmic sound of the rocking chair you heard on the 3rd floor returns, but this time, it is directly above you. Creak, pause, creak. You realize the 4th floor may not be the highest point of the hospital. There might be a small, secret 5th floor crawl space, an attic of the occult, directly above this closet. As you look up, your light catches a strange, mysterious detail, a small, square vent in the ceiling, directly above the painted circle. It is too small to be practical and completely out of place. This vent is not for airflow. It is for listening, or perhaps for something to drop through. It is from this vent that the mournful whisper and the sound of the rocking chair are emanating. You take a deep breath, recognizing that you are standing exactly where the ritual was performed, right beneath the creature's silent observation point. The skeleton key in your pocket feels like a heavy weight now, urging you to unlock the hidden space that must connect the director's files to this strange altar. The key is for a door, not a vent. You look around the small room for a seam in the dark paper, a loose floorboard, a final, secret hiding place. You are standing in the small, oppressive, ritual room. The scent of burnt incense and the painted red circles surrounding you. The chilling sound of the rocking chair, echoing from the secret vent just above the altar, confirms that you have reached the heart of the hospital's dark function. The presence of the girl, the catalyst, is strongest here, just out of sight. You are desperately searching the walls of the supply closet for a hidden panel. A loose seam in the rough brown paper that lines the walls, a place where your heavy, antique skeleton key might fit. the sense of being monitored from above, from that tiny vent, is intense. You feel the cold air moving down from it, like an invisible hand reaching out. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the small room seems to crackle. The air pressure drops sharply, and the silence, that heavy, absolute quiet that has been your constant companion, is shattered by the real terrifying event. A sound so specific and jarring it stops your heart. It is a sharp, distinct tinkle. A single silver bell, ringing once, clearly and loudly, from the darkness of the hallway outside the closet door. It is the sound mentioned in the terrifying prophecy of room 304. The bell rings when she speaks. The sound is not a warning. It is a summons. It confirms that the girl, or the entity bound to her, has been roused by your presence and by your discoveries. The bell fades instantly, leaving behind a silence far more hostile than before. You are rigid, your flashlight beam frozen on the opposite wall. You realize that whatever rang that bell is now very close, and it is moving toward you. You recall the bell's terrible significance. The hospital staff forbade talking about the sound of the bell. It was the culmination of the ritual, the moment the girl's stillness was broken, and the terror was unleashed. You turn your light frantically to the hallway. Nothing. But the silence is gone, replaced by an acute awareness that you are no longer alone. You hear the slightest friction, a delicate, almost inaudible scraping sound coming from the main fourth floor corridor. It sounds like fingernails dragging lightly across the dry, dusty concrete. You look back at the ritual room's paper-covered walls, your eyes catching on a slight irregularity in the dark paper near the floor. You recognize a faint, vertical seam that does not align with the standard construction. You grab the edge of the paper and tear it away violently, revealing a section of the plaster wall underneath. Behind the paper, you find a small, recessed wooden panel, barely 6 inches wide, completely flush with the wall. In the center of this panel is a tiny, hidden keyhole, far smaller and more delicate than the main lock of the director's office. This is the strange, mysterious detail that was meant to remain hidden forever. You pull out your skeleton key. The ceremonial head is large, but the slender ward of the key slides into the tiny, intricate lock with perfect, seamless ease. The iron key is finally home. You turn the key. It clicks softly, and the panel springs open a fraction of an inch. But as you push the panel wider, something unexpected happens. A sudden, cold presence descends upon you. It is not an image or a sound, but an overwhelming psychic weight, a coldness that is not just thermal but deeply invasive. This is the manifestation of the vengeful spirit, the silence made physical. The air around you becomes leaden, and your skin crawls with static electricity. You feel an invisible pressure pushing down on your shoulders, trying to force you to the floor, to make you join the patients in their eternal stillness. Your sentences become urgent now, the horror having found you. The crushing weight is real. You fight to keep your balance, desperate to see what the panel holds, knowing the sound of the scraping thing is closer than ever, just outside the closet door. You fight through the paralysis, forcing your light onto the interior of the opened panel. You see a set of tiny brass hooks inside, designed to hold something small and fragile. But the hooks are empty. Whatever the key was meant to guard is gone. The crushing, cold presence fades slightly as you close the tiny, empty panel. But the absolute terror of the bell still echoes in your mind. The key fit, but the item it guarded, something small and fragile, is gone. The scraping sound from the hallway has stopped, replaced by a terrible, expectant silence. You know the entity is waiting, listening to your fear, calculating its next move. You flee the small ritual closet, the scent of burnt incense giving way to the dry, dusty air of the corridor. The hidden chamber was a dead end for an object, but a clear signpost for the truth. You must find what was taken from that panel, the piece that completes the circle. You head away from the ritual core, knowing that the key to understanding the hospital's purpose might lie in the stored knowledge, the medical library, if one exists. You search the floor plans mentally, recalling the administrative layout, and you descend to the second floor, looking for the quiet stacks where the doctors perform their research. You find the library wing, a cavernous, low-lit space lined with towering, dilapidated shelves. The air here smells overwhelmingly of old paper, dust mites, and a faint, acrid smell of burnt plastic. The real terrifying event that greets you here is the state of the books. They haven't been shelved, they have been shredded. Thousands of books line the floor, their pages ripped and piled into drifts, covering the floor in a treacherous, whispering carpet of bleached paper. It looks like a storm passed through, but the destruction is too methodical, too focused. The medical knowledge of the hospital was not just abandoned, it was systematically annihilated. You carefully pick your way through the paper debris. The destruction stops abruptly at the back wall, where the shelves are completely bare, creating a chilling contrast between the paper chaos and the clinical emptiness. This suggests that only a specific, dangerous subset of knowledge was targeted for obliteration. Amidst the chaos, your flashlight catches a section of books that survived, perhaps hidden by their location or their specific subject matter. These are the texts on local shamanic practices and folk traditions, bound in dark, crumbling leather. You pull one out, the silence and the 7 doors. The obscure text confirms a chilling suspicion. You find a chapter detailing the obscure academic debate concerning the proper ritual for establishing a permanent site of containment for a chi ryong, a contained spirit. The debate revolves around whether the confinement can be achieved using only physical boundaries, or if it requires the spirit's forced eternal silence. No one knows precisely why ancient practitioners believed enforced silence was the key, but the theory posits that a silent spirit cannot call upon the forces of the natural world, thus making it easier to control. The hospital staff were not just trying to stop a ghost, they were trying to deafen a god. This is the hospital's darkest secret. The girl was the focus of a ritual to enforce total, permanent silence over a powerful entity, using the physical manifestation of the hospital and its patients as the containment vessel. The red circles were the locks, and the bell was the key to breaking the silence. As you sift through the pages, a strange, mysterious detail unfolds. Inside the shamanic text, serving as a bookmark, is a thick length of thread, knotted repeatedly. Attached to the thread is a small, hollowed-out bone charm, barely the size of your thumb. The bone is etched with tiny, almost invisible symbols that you recognize as a variant of the red circle mark. You carefully pocket the charm, It is cold and light, and its presence confirms that the hospital staff, particularly the director, was deeply involved in this occult knowledge. Then, you hear it again. Not a bell this time, but a slow, dry drag. The sound of something heavy being pulled across the dusty paper carpet in the center aisle, now hidden by the shadow of the tall shelves. The sound is approaching your location, but you cannot see it. You are surrounded by the terrifying remnants of destroyed knowledge. The lullaby of horror has shifted from silence to pursuit. The sound stops. The library holds its breath, waiting for your next move. The library's silence is now a hostile trap. The sound of something heavy dragging across the paper-strewn floor, the drag that stopped just out of sight, has elevated your terror. You pocket the small bone charm. Its smooth, cold surface, an unsettling reminder of the hospital's occult knowledge. You need to move, to understand the mechanism of their escape. Your frantic gaze sweeps the room, searching for any artifact that holds a personal story, something less academic and more human. In a small, dusty alcove that looks like a former reading nook, you find an overturned desk and a small wooden locker. Using a hairpin or a thin piece of metal, you carefully pry the simple lock open. Inside, you find a collection of personal effects, an empty thermos, a crumpled pack of old Korean cigarettes, and a single battered cassette player. Next to it, labeled meticulously on a piece of masking tape, is a cassette marked Night Watchman's Tape, Final Shift. This is the real terrifying event of this section. A human voice breaking the decades of silence. You carefully insert the cassette and press play. The tape hisses, then you hear a man's heavy, frantic breathing. He is speaking, his voice low and terrified. Barely a whisper. I am recording this at 4:12 a.m. I told them not to leave me alone. They said the perimeter was secured, but the silence is changing. It feels like breathing now. I keep hearing the whispers on the 4th floor, even though they cleared it this afternoon. It's too cold. The generator is fine, but the temperature is dropping in the West Wing. I saw her. I saw the girl. She wasn't walking, she was gliding. Her feet never touched the ground. She was standing at the end of the hall for 2 hours, just watching the camera. I tried to shout, but my voice, it wouldn't work. The silence, it gets in your throat. And then, at 3:00 a.m., the bell, one ring, only one. And then I heard them. Not the patients, the staff. They were screaming, not in pain, but in sheer, profound terror. They were running, and they left me here. I can hear the water rising in the basement now. It's scratching at the drain. I think I'm going to turn the power off. I can't let it see me. Don't come here. Don't listen for the bell. The tape ends abruptly, replaced by the white noise of static. The man's final, desperate attempt to document his escape reveals 2 crucial facts. The girl's movement is unnatural, and the staff's final hours were not a planned evacuation, but a panicked, terrified flight following the single ring of the bell. He tried to turn the power off, to blind the building and escape the gaze of the girl. This brings you to a second obscure academic debate confirmed by the hospital's actions. The debate among occultists regarding a spirit's reliance on modern energy. Was the staff's attempt to cut the power merely a flight response? Or did they understand that the power grid, the hospital's life support, also served as a conduit for the entity, a channel for the Qi Riyang to exert its influence. The watchman's action to turn off the power implies a deliberate attempt to cut the connection, to break the circuit of silence and fear. As the static fades, a strange, mysterious detail unfolds. You notice that the cassette player is wired not for batteries, but for an external power source. Attached to the player is a thick, black wire that leads not to an outlet, but is cut clean at the end. The wire itself is wrapped in a small piece of surgical tape, on which a single, meticulous red circle has been drawn. The director or the staff members didn't just abandon the hospital, they deliberately sabotaged the mechanism of documentation. But they left the key piece, the tape to be found. Suddenly, a gentle scare ripples through the air. You feel a distinct, cold pressure on the back of your neck, like a single, icy breath on your skin. You remember the sound of the drag that stopped. The entity is behind you now, silent, waiting for you to move, perhaps analyzing the sound of the watchman's tape. You quickly pocket the tape player, the feeling of the presence pressing you forward toward the next key piece. You must find the architectural maps, the thing that shows the hospital's hidden geometry. The cold pressure on your neck has receded, but the watchman's desperate voice still echoes in your mind. The silence, it gets in your throat. You flee the library, the paper shreds rustling softly under your feet as if they are whispering their own secrets. You know you are being pursued by the entity, guided by the sound of the bell, and you need a way to navigate the hospital's true structure. Your pursuit leads you back to the administrative wing on the second floor, looking for a forgotten storage closet where blueprints or architectural diagrams might be kept. You find a small, bolted room labeled archival supplies. The door is sealed tight, secured by a heavy metal bracket. You use the skeleton key, not on the lock, but as a wedge, carefully prying the weakened metal frame just enough to slip a small crowbar through. With a sickening screech of metal, the door gives way. Inside, the room is cramped and musty, filled with old rolls of parchment and desiccated rubber bands. You quickly sift through the brittle documents, looking for floor plans. You find several rolls, but they all display the standard public-facing layout of the hospital: 4 floors, lobby, basement. The map you need must show the secret geometry. You toss aside the official blueprints and notice a stack of school notebooks tucked into a dusty corner. They are clearly not hospital property. They are filled with childlike scribbles. And the cover of the top book has a familiar, crudely drawn red circle on it. This is the real terrifying event of this section, the patient's drawing. You open the notebook. It is filled entirely with disturbing, meticulous architectural sketches drawn with the intense, obsessive focus of a child deeply attuned to the structure around them. These are not drawings of people or toys. They are drawings of the hospital itself. But they are chillingly wrong. The drawings depict hidden geometries, tunnels beneath the basement, a false wall in the pantry, and a hidden shaft connecting the director's office directly to the ritual closet on the 4th floor. The girl, or the entity observing through her, knew the hospital not as a place of healing, but as a massive, occult mechanism. She had mapped out its true, forbidden function. One drawing in particular stops your breath. It is a cross-section of the 1st floor, detailing the kitchen and pantry area. The drawing clearly indicates a secret corridor, a narrow passage accessible only through a hinged section of the pantry's back wall. Next to this drawing, a small annotation in the same meticulous script simply reads, "The way to her." This is the strange, mysterious detail that connects your journey to its horrifying climax. The key in your pocket was not for the director's office or the basement padlock. It was likely for the hidden lock or latch on that secret corridor. The girl drew a map to her own imprisonment, or perhaps a map to her escape. You recall the unsettling phrase from room 304, "I am the silence now." The girl's profound stillness was a forced state, and she was observing and mapping her environment, waiting for the right moment or the right person to break her silence. As you fold the notebook and pocket the crucial drawing, the atmosphere in the small closet suddenly feels tight, compressed. You hear a sound outside, not a scraping, not a bell, but a slow, rhythmic thump, thump against the door of the archival supplies room, exactly where you breached the seal. The sound is low, heavy, and deliberate, suggesting a relentless, non-human determination. The relentless assault of the haunting presence has found you again, attempting to breach the final barrier between you and its crushing silence. The thumping is a countdown. The map points you back down to the first floor, to the mundane, often overlooked area of the hospital's pantry and kitchen. The deep, dark secrets are often hidden just behind the most ordinary places. You must move quickly before the thumping breaks the door down and the silence claims you. The rhythmic thump-thump against the door of the archival closet accelerates your heart. You flee the administrative wing, the terrifying map drawn by the girl clutched in your hand, its lines guiding you to the most mundane yet most crucial area, the first floor kitchen and pantry. This is where the hospital's dark secret took its first physical steps, hiding behind the smell of stale food and forgotten cleaning supplies. You race down the stairs, ignoring the sounds of movement from the floors above and below, focusing only on the coordinates drawn in the child's obsessive hand. You enter the sprawling kitchen complex. It is a vast, industrial space, cluttered with overturned steel racks and greasy, ruined appliances. The air here smells heavy and rancid, a layer of filth left by decades of neglect. You locate the pantry, a separate cold room designed for dry storage. It's small, lined with empty wooden shelving units. The drawings had pointed to the back wall, the one furthest from the entrance. You move to the designated spot. The wall is covered in the same peeling, institutional paint as the rest of the room. But as your flashlight sweeps across it, you notice the real terrifying event, a nearly invisible seam running vertically down the center of the wall. Exactly where the drawing indicated, it is a false wall, a heavy hinged section that opens like a hidden door. You press along the seam. Doesn't give. The girl's map was correct, but the door is locked from the outside. You search meticulously along the edge of the panel, and your fingers find a small, almost microscopic indentation, a recess where a latch or lock was meant to be inserted. You pull out the heavy, cold, ceremonial skeleton key from the basement. You insert its oddly shaped ward into the recess, and the key slides home with a soft, final click. The lock is released. You push the panel inward, and it swings silently open, revealing a shaft of absolute, suffocating darkness. You have accessed the secret corridor. You step inside the narrow, hidden hallway. The space is barely wide enough for your shoulders, and the air here is immediately different, dry, hot, and close. smelling intensely of dust and something metallic that is not iron, but more like oxidized copper. This corridor is not part of the hospital's medical function. It is an artery of the ritual. As you move slowly, your flashlight beam bounces off the rough-hewn concrete walls. You realize this corridor runs directly between the structural walls of the hospital. An undocumented void. After a few feet, the corridor widens slightly, and you find the final, undeniable, strange, mysterious detail of this hidden path. Nailed crudely to the concrete wall is a series of small wooden plaques. They are dark with age, and each one is inscribed with a single archaic Korean character that you recognize the characters. They are the names of the patients who were recorded in the nurse's log as falling into the collective stillness, the patients who were systematically sacrificed. Their names were hung here as a kind of spiritual toll for the entity to pass. This chilling discovery brings you to a third obscure academic debate confirmed by the hospital's horrifying architecture, the use of corpse roads or spiritual pathways within buildings. Scholars debate whether spirits could be effectively contained by guiding them through dedicated, narrow paths lined with markers. The theory suggests the markers control the flow of the spirit, preventing it from spreading randomly. The staff was essentially funneling the deadly stillness through this corridor, using the sacrificed patients' names as signposts, or perhaps as bait. Suddenly, as you pass the final named plaque, a soft, dry, whooshing sound rushes past your face, followed by the distant, unmistakable tinkle of the bell, ringing once again, now muffled but closer than ever. The sound confirms that the girl, or the entity bound to her, is aware of your location within the secret corridor, and you are trapped. The bell is your warning, your inescapable cold spine prick. The corridor ends abruptly at a simple wooden door, thicker than the others. There is no handle, only a small, heavy brass plate with a single, deeply etched red circle on it. You have arrived at the hospital's true, dark heart, the room where the silence was born and nurtured. You prepare to face the hospital's darkest secret. The final, soft tinkle of the bell has solidified your resolve. You stand before the plain wooden door at the end of the secret, patient-lined corridor, the brass plate with the deeply etched red circle marking the entrance. The air here is unnaturally hot and thick, a final barrier of oppressive pressure. You realize that you have traveled through the very arteries of the hospital's ritualistic life. There is no lock or handle on the door, only that chilling brass plate. You press against the wood with your shoulder, and the door gives way instantly, silently swinging inward to a room that has been kept entirely separate from the rot and decay of the outside world. You step into the hidden room's altar. The room is small, square, and surprisingly clean. There is no dust. The walls are not painted but lined with meticulously placed, smooth, dark river stones, reminiscent of the warm pebble you found in the director's coat pocket. In the center of the room, there is a large, flat slab of polished, black obsidian, resting on a pedestal carved from rough, unpolished wood. This is the altar. This is the hospital's true, terrifying function. The hospital's true, non-medical function was not treatment, but containment and harvest. The patient's collective silence was the fuel. This room was the engine. The medical facility was a sophisticated modern cover for an ancient shamanistic site. On the obsidian altar, resting perfectly in the center, is a single chilling object, a small antique silver handbell. It is clearly the source of the recent tinkling sound. The bell's surface is intricately engraved with symbols, and you recognize the pattern. It is a variation of the same ominous red circle mark that has followed you since the beginning. This bell is the key. The real terrifying event is the realization that the entity doesn't ring the bell. The bell is the physical manifestation of the containment spell breaking. When the silence is complete, the spirit is contained. But when an intruder you disturbs the circle, the silence is broken, and the bell of release rings. You look around for a sign of the girl. The catalyst. You find a small, recessed shelf built into the stone wall directly behind the altar. On the shelf, there is a small, beautifully carved wooden box, the kind designed to hold something precious and small. You open the box. Inside is a perfectly preserved lock of fine, black hair, child's hair, alongside a small, antique tin soldier. Its uniform faded, but its eyes painted with the same red circles you saw on the doll in the operating room. This is the strange, mysterious detail that reveals the personal tragedy at the core of the ritual. This lock of hair, this toy, these were the girl's final physical anchors to the world, ritually preserved and kept here at the altar. As you stare at the lock of hair, your mind races to connect the final pieces of the puzzle. The patient's silence was the containment field. The bell was the warning system, and the girl's possessions were the tether, the binding that kept her power anchored to the hospital's geometry. Suddenly, the bell on the altar vibrates. It doesn't ring, but emits a low, resonant hum that vibrates through the soles of your feet and up your spine. The small room suddenly fills with the overwhelming scent of chrysanthemums, the same flowers you saw on the lobby windowsill and the dried petals you found in room 304. This is a gentle scare, a sensory overload that signals the immediate, looming presence of the entity. You are no longer alone. The girl has arrived. The bell is humming, ready to ring again. You realize that to survive, you must not simply run. You must understand her role, the true nature of the girl, the catalyst for the hospital's dark secret. She is not a ghost, but something much, much older. The silver bell on the obsidian altar is humming, a low, threatening sound that fills the hidden room with the oppressive scent of funeral flowers. The cold, heavy pressure that followed you from the 4th floor has condensed here. You are face to face with the altar, and you must understand the terrible truth about the girl before the bell rings again. You hold the tiny tin soldier and the lock of black hair, the only relics of the girl who became patient zero. You realize that the narrative of this hospital isn't about a ghost. It's about a host. The real terrifying event is the connection you finally make between the file and the altar. The hospital staff, led by the director, did not create the girl. They found her. The ancient texts you saw in the library described the Qi Riyong, a powerful, geographically bound spirit, but those texts also spoke of the need for a witness vessel, a child of pure, involuntary stillness, whose life force could be used as a spiritual battery to anchor the volatile spirit to the containment site. The girl, who was deposited without a name or diagnosis, was not sick. She was perfect for the ritual. Her perpetual stillness, her quiet, tracking eyes, made her the perfect human magnet to draw the powerful entity into the hospital's geometry. The staff used their medical knowledge to hide their occult practice. The operating room was not for surgery, it was for the binding ritual using the hemp cords, attaching the Qi Ryong to the witness vessel. The terrifying truth of the girl's origin is that she was the key and the lock simultaneously. Her own life force was the engine that powered the enforced silence, the invisible wall that kept the Qi Ryong contained and prevented the full-scale spectral outbreak. The red circles were not just a code, they were seals placed on her, signifying her role as the passive anchor. The moment the patient started to go silent was not the start of a virus. It was the ritual working perfectly, harvesting the stillness of the patients to feed the containment field, a collective psychological sacrifice that kept the greater evil at bay. As you consider this terrible sacrifice, a gentle scare ripples through the room. The tin soldier in your hand suddenly feels icy cold, and the small, recessed eyes, painted with the red circles, seem to glint in your flashlight beam, reflecting a light source that isn't there. You feel the child's terror, the years of enforced stillness, trapped inside that small piece of tin. This intense, personal connection to her fear gives you the final, strange, mysterious detail you need. As you look at the river stones lining the wall, you remember the warm pebble in the director's coat. You realize the stone walls are not just decoration. They are a specific geological anchor drawn from a remote, sacred spot. The director's attempt to use earth magic to enhance the containment. The director was not just running the hospital. He was the high priest of the silence. The humming of the silver bell intensifies, vibrating now so strongly that it rattles the items on the pedestal. The time for understanding is over. You know that the hospital shut down because the containment failed, likely due to the staff's panicked attempt to break the circuit by cutting the power, as the watchman's tape suggested. The silence was broken, and the Qi Ryong was released. You need to find the final testament, the doctor's last words, to understand the mechanism of the failure and find your own escape route. The altar room is charged with the oppressive presence of the awakened entity, the silver bell on the obsidian slab vibrating with a low, continuous hum, the scent of chrysanthemums, the flowers of morning, is overwhelming. You know the hospital failed because the containment ritual, powered by the girl's stillness and the patient's silence, was broken. Now, you need the final, clear, human testimony to understand the full horror of the collapse. You search the tight perimeter of the altar room, running your hand along the stone-lined walls, near the floor, behind the pedestal. Your hand finds a rough-hewn section that feels loose. You pry it open with the tip of the skeleton key. It is not a secret door, but a small, dry, earthen cavity in the ground. Inside, wrapped in a brittle piece of plastic sheeting, is a water-stained, thick surgical envelope. You pull it out, recognizing the faded, panicked handwriting of the final nurse's log entry on the outside. This is the doctor's desperate note, the final, non-official message left by the director or a high-ranking physician before they fled or succumbed to the silence. This envelope contains the real terrifying event that led to the hospital's abandonment, the complete clinical breakdown of the ritual. The note is a single, densely written page, a hurried confession. The bell has rung, Not once, but continuously. We failed. The containment field requires a perfect, constant input of stillness. It requires the girl's silence. But the core began to decay. She began to speak in her sleep, not words, but the archaic, high-pitched wailing of the Qi Riyang. This noise, this unsilence, fractured the patient's stillness. They didn't die, they were violently set free from the ritual's binding, and the residual energy of their terror fueled the entity. When the nurses heard the bell, they panicked and attempted to sever the power of the electric conduit to stop the process, but they only succeeded in cutting the anchor. The girl vanished into the structure, and the entity, freed from its host and powered by decades of collected silence, became the hospital itself. The message confirms your deepest fear. The hospital is not just haunted, it is the creature. The structure itself is the physical body of the Qi Riyang, utilizing the hidden corridors and the sealed wards as its circulatory system, and the silence as its breath. The terrifying noise the watchman heard was not the patients screaming, but the staff screaming as the building, newly embodied by the entity, turned on them. This brings you to a critical, obscure academic debate confirmed by the director's failure. The theory of involuntary spiritual transference Ulsan Hyun. No one knows why this occurs, but the belief is that if a spirit is violently detached from its host, vessel the girl, it will immediately seek out the largest, most stable inanimate object in the vicinity. In this case, the hospital, and merge with it, making the building sentient and malevolent. The staff's panicked attempt to cut the power did exactly that. It broke the host vessel connection and transferred the spirit into the architecture. A strange, mysterious detail in the note adds a final, chilling layer of dread. The doctor scribbled a postscript at the bottom. Drawn with a trembling hand, the girl is now the shadow of the house. She keeps the keys, and the house listens through her. The door to the outside is gone. We are sealed in the dream. The message ends there, the ink trailing off into a smear. The bell on the altar is now vibrating so violently it is making the smallest objects dance. The scent of ozone returns. Sharp and metallic, you realize the exit you used, the front door, is an illusion. The hospital, now sentient, has sealed itself, transforming your exploration into an inescapable dream. You are sealed within the architecture, trapped in the creature's massive, silent embrace. You must run. Not for an exit, almost sadis, but for the one place the map showed an anomaly. The place where the cycle must begin again. The doctor's note, sealed in the cavity, confirms your absolute dread. The hospital is alive. The Chai Ryong merged with the structure, sealing itself and you within its massive, silent form. The bell on the altar is no longer merely humming. It is shivering, vibrating on the obsidian slab as the hospital senses your panic and begins to contract around you. You know there is no external exit. The front door you used to enter was an illusion maintained by the failing containment field. The only path left is to follow the hospital's internal logic. The girl's final, terrifying map. You clutch the drawing, the relic of her forced silence, and flee the altar room. You race back through the secret corridor, past the names of the sacrificed patients, and out into the main kitchen. The air here is now icy cold, a sudden, unnatural drop in temperature that suggests the entity is moving through the vents and spaces around you, sealing its body. Your frantic gaze sweeps the kitchen area, following the unsettling lines of the girl's map. The map shows one final, crucial anomaly, a staircase leading down from the kitchen, marked with a tiny frantic arrow pointing toward the flooded basement. The same basement you were warned not to enter, where the wet, dragging sound waited behind the locked gate. This is the hospital's final, real, terrifying event. The moment you realize the exit to this specific dream lies not in escape, but in re-entering the cycle of containment. The structure, being a sentient prison, must have a central point of weakness, a spot where the ritual's energy failed. You descend the final, slippery flight of concrete steps into the flooded basement. The murky water, reflecting your light, now seems thicker, oilier. The metallic tang of iron is overpowering. The dragging sound is gone, replaced by a low, rhythmic thrumming that comes from beneath the water. The pulse of the hospital's dark, beating heart. You splash through the water, heading back toward the original, chained basement's gate, the barrier you could not pass. But the girl's map had revealed a truth. The gate was not an exit barrier. It was an internal boundary marker within the ritual's geometry. As you approach the gate, you notice the water level has risen significantly, now reaching almost to your knees. Your light beam sweeps across the surface, and you see a strange, mysterious detail that causes a tremor of nausea. Floating just below the surface, half submerged in the grime, is a collection of hundreds of small, white objects. They look like the empty eye sockets of the dolls and toys you have encountered, perfectly rounded and blank. They bob gently in the cold water, staring up at you. It is the visual manifestation of the hospital's harvest, all the things that were watching the silence, now released and blinded. Then, a gentle scare manifests, not a sound, but a movement within the water itself. A sudden, small ripple breaks the surface of the stagnant water directly between you and the gate, as if a small, unseen hand gently broke the tension. You feel an icy, powerful surge of cold water rush around your ankles, trying to trip you, trying to pull you down into the endless ward beneath the water's surface. You fight the pull, stumbling forward to the gate. The lock is still there, solid and rusted. You slam the palm of your hand against the cold metal. Your final, desperate act. You are sealed in the dream, and the inescapable dream is beginning to replay its most terrifying moments. The hospital has brought you full circle, back to the one barrier you could not cross. You have learned the secrets, but the cost is your freedom. The only path forward is through the submerged unknown. You stand at the rusted gate in the flooded basement. The bobbing, hollow eye sockets of the vanished dolls staring up at you from the murky water. The thrumming beneath your feet, the pulse of the living hospital is now a frantic vibration, warning you that the final confrontation is upon you. The doctor's last note screamed the truth. The door to the outside is gone. We are sealed in the dream. The only way out of the current horror is to break the cycle. You turn your flashlight toward the water, following the lines of the girl's terrifying map. She had drawn an X beneath the very gate where you stand, marking the point of ultimate weakness, the final, corrupted anchor of the ritual. This is the hospital's final, inescapable moment, the climax of the terror. The water around your legs suddenly begins to churn, not violently, but with a slow, powerful vortex pulling downward. A black, Oily substance rises to the surface, smelling of burnt hair and ancient decay. You feel an immense, crushing weight pressing you from above the entire sentient hospital structure, focusing its power on this single point. The real terrifying event is the materialization of the haunting presence. From the swirling darkness beneath the water, the shape begins to rise. It is not a rotting corpse or a monstrous figure, but a distorted shadow of the girl, the host vessel. She is barely visible, a translucent, dark outline in an oversized white hospital gown, her body perpetually gliding just inches above the water, her feet not touching the flood. Her face is obscured by the darkness, a blank canvas of profound, eternal stillness. But the space where her eyes should be is now blazing with a faint, malevolent red light, the final, embodied red circles. You are witnessing the confrontation with the haunting presence, the host and the spirit, the stillness and the silence, merged and waiting. She moves with an impossible slowness, gliding toward you, her presence draining the heat from the air. You realize the truth. This is the endless ward, the eternal cycle mentioned in the outline. You are not meant to leave. You are meant to take the girl's place as the next witness vessel, the next source of stillness. As the shadowy figure reaches the bars of the gate, closer than you can bear, you hear the final, chilling melody. It is the faint, distant sound of the hymn you first heard upon entering the grounds, now sung clearly by the reedy voice, but corrupted, twisted into a horrifying lullaby of silence. A strange, mysterious detail unfolds in your pocket. The heavy skeleton key, the one you found in the water, suddenly vibrates and becomes scorching hot, burning through your clothing. The key is responding to the entity, drawn by its presence. You pull it out, and you see that its ceremonial head is now glowing faintly with the same malevolent red light as the girl's eyes. She stops inches from the gate, her head tilting, the red lights of her eyes fixed on the key in your hand. The bell on the altar has stopped humming. The hospital is silent, waiting for the final exchange. You have the key to her entrapment, and she has the stillness that will seal you in the dream. The cycle of fear is about to begin again, and you must become one with the silence. The confrontation dissolves not in violence, but in a profound, heavy stillness. The hospital, the sentient, malevolent being, has made its choice. The coldness and the pressure recede slowly, like a tide pulling back from a quiet shore. The red light fades from the girl's shadowed eyes, and the silver bell you left on the altar goes completely silent, its threat extinguished for the moment. The haunting presence, the girl, the host, the Chi-Ryong, does not attack. It merely waits. You feel the terrifying realization settle over you. The horror is not about an immediate demise, but about eternal imprisonment. The structure is sealed, and you are now an enduring, if unwelcome, part of its silent anatomy. The hospital is no longer pursuing you. It is simply holding you, allowing you to wander the corridors as a restless, temporary inmate. Your panic subsides, replaced by a profound, exhausted calm. The long, terrifying journey through the wards, the files, and the altars has ended. Not with freedom, but with the silent acceptance of your new reality. The air in the basement is cold, but the threat is passive now. a slow burn dread that will define your new existence within the endless ward. You turn your back on the gate and the spectral shadow, and you slowly walk back through the oily, stagnant water. Your footsteps are heavy, sluggish, less like escape and more like a retreat into a dark, familiar room. The adrenaline is gone. Your eyes feel tired. You start to ascend the steps, leaving the cold, pulsing heart of the hospital below. The silence wrapping itself around you like a heavy, comforting shroud. The hospital breathes around you. You are safe now, in its terrible embrace. The dream is over, and your real sleep is about to begin.